Greetings everyone and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm your host Captain Ryan. Today's YouTube video is a replay sent to us by Nate378. And Nate is playing in the premium Tier 7 British battleship, the HMS Hood. As the battle gets underway, it's estuary, it's domination match mode, and Nate's team has a destroyer advantage, having 4 destroyers to the enemy's 3. Now, Nate is in the Tier 7 British battleship, the HMS Hood, which is a ship that a lot of people were really excited to get their hands on. I know I certainly was eagerly anticipating this particular battleship in the game. But it's a ship that you just don't see anybody playing anymore. And there are a couple of reasons for that. Mainly, it's a long ship. It's not got the best armor, especially not on the deck, and of course we know that from historical relevance. And she's got crap gun and shell handling characteristics, on top of being long, with not the best armor and a nice big citadel, and having that crap gun and shell handling characteristics. She also has very limited secondaries. They have a very limited arc of fire thanks to their positioning. But she does have some pretty ridiculous anti-aircraft. So if you find yourself in a game against an enemy carrier of equal tier or lower, generally speaking, you've got that defensive fire capability, so anything that flies over you, you're just going to shred. You're not going to take them out before they're able to drop their weapons on you, but you are basically going to be able to panic them, and those aircraft are not going to get back to the carrier. Now, the enemy team has already managed to secure a first blood well before either team has had an opportunity to secure a cap. This is going to be kind of interesting because Nate's team really wasn't in a position to afford to take that hit. Now, Nate's team does manage to kill off one of the destroyers early on who was challenging the D cap point. And that's going to be really good for Nate's team because anytime I say you can get that destroyer advantage, especially early, you can cause some significant problems. Now, Nate's pushing up here pretty quickly. The Hood is a fast battleship and it is ridiculously fast. I think it'll go 31 or 33 knots with a speed flag and a straight line, so it's very quick. Enemy team manages to kill one of Nate team's destroyers, and they are currently in the ship's lead, having killed at least one other ship. Now, Nate's got himself a couple of cruisers up here, and normally if you were in a battleship, you see cruisers like this, you'd be like, yeah, alright, we can take them. But again, comes down to the poor gun and shell handling characteristics. The armor piercing on this ship just doesn't have that delay on the fuse that much. So as a result, shooting bow on cruisers, your shots aren't going to necessarily citadel. They might penetrate, but they're not going to citadel. Now, the enemy team manages to kill 2 more destroyers on Nate's team, and that's going to leave them equal on destroyers. So there goes the destroyer advantage that they had. The enemy team definitely up on ships at this point, as they have only lost 3 to Nate's 5. Now, Nate's secondaries are blazing away, and look how much of a broadside he has to be giving in order for those secondaries to be blazing away. But they are doing something. They are hitting and resetting at the cap. Nate's getting himself turned around here. He knows that there's a Belfast up here, and that Belfast has got radar, so he's going to be spotted no matter what he does. But there is a Russian cruiser up there, and that guy's got at least 4-kilometer torpedoes, so he does have to be careful as he closes in here. However, with any luck, he'll be able to get his guns on point and deliver a death blow. Yes, and he does do it. Takes out that pay fast, so no more enemy cruiser at the D cap point. Well, no more enemy cruiser with smoke anyway. He still has to deal with that Russian cruiser that's up here. And you can see that Russian cruiser does see him because he's spotted by the battleship in the distance there, and that Russian cruiser is putting out shots. One of the advantages that this ship does have with its guns is actually the turret rotation is very, very quick, and reloading of shells is also kind of fast too. Here come the torpedoes that I was expecting from that cruiser. But you notice RNG's is ever the troll leaves that cruiser with next to no health at all. But those shells from this battleship did penetrate, and they did citadel. So that shorter fuse that you have as a result makes the hood excellent for cruiser hunting, because you can get a broadside cruiser with weaker armor, and those shells have a short fuse timer, so they're going to go ahead and instantly arm and penetrate and cause some significant damage. Against other battleships, though, you're going to watch these shells bounce and shatter more often than not. And I've had it times in the hood where I've had shots on a broadside battleship at a range of 6 kilometers shatter. Never fun. Now, Nate knows there's this cruiser up here. He knows he's very, very low health, so he gets his shots out there. He doesn't even need all those guns, but remember, poor gun handling characteristics, he needed to fire off a full broadside to ensure that at least one was going to hit him, and of course he citadels him when he does and finishes him off. So Nate's now sitting on a nice, comfortable 2 kills. But look at this, the enemy team has just gone and dominated off at the A cap point, wrecking Nate's team. So Nate's not got a lot up here. Those torpedoes, fortunately, from the cruiser's last-ditch effort, did die, as they, again, were only, I think, 4-kilometer torpedoes. So now Nate and his teammate up here in the Alabama are both in a prime position to secure the D cap point. And if they can secure that, they can at the very least get some additional points in. But remember, look at the cap situation. The enemy team's going after A hardcore, and they have a ship's advantage. That means that while Nate is going to be able to capture the D cap point, it's not really going to do them much good if the enemy team manages to capture A, because they're going to be gaining points at the same rate. They are a little bit up on points, a little under 100 points ahead of Nate and his team. But again, now that they've got the double cap, they're gaining at the same rate. So Nate and his comrade here need to figure out where to go. They can go up back to the B cap point or the C cap point and determine where they want to attack the enemy team. From the looks of it, ships that they have over at the A cap point should be able to defend pretty easily at the B cap point. So instead, Nate's going to go down this center channel. This is going to give him a little bit more time to decide if he wants to go to the B cap point to defend, or if he wants to attack at the C cap point. Now his teammate here, who was at the D cap point with him, has decided to go around the other side of the island, and that's going to limit him to solely attacking the C cap point. The enemy team manages to take out yet another ship, and that's going to leave Nate's team dangerously low on ships. But hey, you know what? They just managed to take out yet another one, and now his team is in the process of capping A. So his team is finally going to be able to start gaining points at a rate greater than the enemy team. This is good for Nate, and he's going to come up here and push around this island. He's got to be careful, though, because that is a battleship. But that battleship, hey, he's shooting at the Alabama. This is perfect. Targets of opportunity. Go ahead and split that fire on him. And you'll notice that he aimed a little bit high there, and those high shots went into the superstructure. So they penetrated into the superstructure, but if he had aimed it at the bow, they would have all shattered or bounced. Something to remember if you're playing this battleship, especially if you've got angled battleships against you, don't even bother aiming at the hull. Go ahead and aim high. You can switch over to high explosive and start setting fires, because the guns are pretty good at setting fires. That battleship, very low health, and Nate does manage to finish him off. Again, aims a little bit high, hits that superstructure, penetrates and over-penetrates. He didn't have a lot of health left, so this worked out really well for him. His team is now down to just 3 ships, and I believe they're all battleships at this point. But you'll notice as Nate pushes in here to the C cap point, he's got a serious problem on his hands. He's got 2 battleships up here. One of whom is kind of low health and sailing broadside on here, Tier 7 Gneisenau, and the other one that's a Tier 6 New Mexico that is not moving and full health. And that not moving New Mexico, well, that New Mexico is, of course, AFK. So really, Nate's only concern is that Gneisenau, who's decided that he's going to go ahead and shoot high explosive, set Nate on fire, and cause him some headaches with that. But Nate does have his backup. He's got that Alabama back there still. Now, the enemy team managed to maintain their control over the A cap point and managed to sink their friendly battleship over there. So the enemy team has got a 2-to-1 ships lead at this point, and as a result, they still currently have a points lead. The question is, are they going to be able to sink this Gneisenau before he can repair? Come on, get him sunk. Wow, that Alabama managed to miss. It's probably very, very frustrating. More shots coming in there. Those are, of course, from the Gneisenau secondaries. He's targeting him. He's trying to continuously reset this cap. But he doesn't have manual secondaries there, because those secondaries were shooting all over the place, including at the Alabama. Now, Nate finally manages to take out that Gneisenau. He didn't get the kill on it, but he did quite a significant amount of damage on it, and he's got a New Mexico up here. He's going to slow down. He's going to stay in the cap. He's going to let his secondaries do some of the work here. I mean, obviously, they're not manual secondaries. They're not particularly accurate, but if he stays in the cap, he can secure the C cap point, and he can ensure that his team is going to gain points at triple the rate. Unfortunately, ends up speeding up, drifts out of the cap. That's going to be a serious problem. His team is currently up on points, having more points, but if they had secured the C cap point, they could have easily gained enough points to weather any potential storm, especially a potential storm of having that enemy battleship, as you can see there on the minimap, come through that channel and start trying to wreck them, with the potential that they might come through and sink him or the Alabama. And if they got one or the other, that would put the last remaining survivor in a position of, well, dire straits, really not having much option. And if they manage to kill the Alabama, which has better gun handling characteristics than those 16-inch shells, versus the hood, then Nate in the hood would have a significantly difficult time doing much of anything. Now he gets himself turned around, so he's bow on towards the approaching enemies, which is a smart maneuver. He doesn't need to be bow on. He doesn't need to worry about armor tanking on that New Mexico, who's put quite a bit of hurt onto. And his secondaries are still blazing away here, but they haven't managed to send any fires, which is a little disappointing. Still, though, he has done a lot of damage to him, so that if that New Mexico does suddenly pop into the game, and it's always a possibility, late loads there, he is going to be at a disadvantage in any engagement. So looking at the situation, as he pushes back into the C cap point, he's going to go ahead and let his secondaries continue shooting at that next mix. He's got one battleship up here. That looks like the Arizona there, and he's going to start getting shots off at him. That Arizona, of course, has the armor, and he's really going to be quite able to tank this. And especially because it's the hood's armor-piercing shells. Those shells are just not going to penetrate very well. But he's got an even bigger problem here. He's got a Bismarck or Tirpitz up here that's pushing up. And that's a Tier 8 battleship. And we know what happened the last time the Bismarck and the hood faced off in an engagement. And that Bismarck is trying desperately to make a repeat of that situation, as he's putting the punishment down onto Nate, partly because he knows he can penetrate the hood, and partly because he knows he can't penetrate a bow-angled Alabama. Personally, I'm actually surprised that you're not seeing a lot of secondary fire going out at the Alabama. That does surprise me, because you would think that he would be doing that in an effort to try and reset the cap there with his secondaries, as well as set a lot of fires. Now that Alabama is firing high explosive at the New Mexico, and this makes absolutely no sense. The New Mexico is a non-threat. What he needs to be doing is firing high explosive into that Bismarck in order to ensure that between the two of them, they can cause significant enough damage to him that one or the other can finish off that Bismarck in the event that one of them dies. Now Nate's secondary is continuing to blaze away. He finally earns himself a high caliber award for the amount of damages he's done, as his secondaries finish off the New Mexico with fire. Ends up beaching himself kind of in a bad position here. He's scraping on the rocks. He can't really reverse because he's broadside on to that Bismarck, and the Hood does not have the armor to do broadsides. It's a fast ship, sure, it can turn pretty quickly, but it just does not have that armor. Now that Bismarck, though, he's managed to whittle down the Alabama with the help of his friendly battleship that gone back up behind the island. And between the two of them, it looks like they might actually be able to finish him off, and that's going to leave Nate alone, standing against two, one of which is a Bismarck. This is now a do-or-die situation. But that's not going to stop Nate. He knows he's got speed. He knows he has rapid-firing guns and a pretty good turn traverse on those guns. So he's going to go ahead and he's going to get himself moving forward, get that speed advantage again. Right now, that Bismarck's in a position where he can't do too much because his rear turrets are blocked, as he's not broadside. But he also knows if he goes broadside to get his rear turrets on, there's a possibility that Nate's guns could cause him some issues. Now Nate switches over to the high explosive here, a very good deal. Look at that, instantly gets a fire right off the bat. Those 15-inch guns have a pretty high percent chance for fire. And it's actually recommended, if you're playing in the Hood and you're dealing with battleships, especially higher tier battleships, to just go ahead and load that high explosive and burn the man down. So Nate has been forced away from the sea cap point. It's really disappointing that neither person on the team was able to get the sea cap point. That would have certainly helped them gain points faster to a point where all Nate would have to do is survive. Now that Bismarck did put that first fire out, which is a little surprising, and it's going to suck for him now because he's burning again as Nate manages to set him on fire yet again. He switches back over to the armor piercing. Now that that battleship is on fire, he's going to keep burning down. He doesn't necessarily need to keep firing high explosive, especially if they're going to shatter. The enemy Colorado, not the Arizona, is up there at the D cap point now, and he's trying to cap, but Nate's going to go ahead and he's going to continue to angle hard away against him. The stern of this battleship not particularly the best because of the way the superstructure on the ship is situated. Bismarck very low health. He's got an option here as to who to shoot. He decides to go for the Bismarck, drops him incredibly low health, secures his Kraken through fire, and now with the Bismarck gone, he really only has to deal with the Colorado. Now he can outrun the Colorado without any issue. But that Colorado, if he's got a spotter plane, can outrange him. So this is kind of a situation you don't really want to find yourself in. You have the speed advantage, but you don't have the health advantage, and you don't have the armor advantage. And you'll notice he doesn't have any more repairs left. So he can run away from this Colorado pretty effectively, who is bow on. Now, he does manage to hit him. He does manage to penetrate because those shots came in right from the top. The question is, who's going to secure the kill, as there's not a lot of time left here in this match, but it's going to be Nate who manages to secure that kill, getting himself 6 kills, 195,000 damage, Confederate Dreadnought, Kraken Unleashed, and High Caliber with a wow number of secondary hits, a fires set, and a nice fat 18,000 XP earned. Of course, that's going to be because of the North American server XP weekend going on. And of course, with a plethora of awards like this, you would expect to be top of the team for XP earned at 2,400 base XP there, well over 2,400 base XP available to him. Anyway, that's it for today's video, folks. If you liked the video, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and leave a comment down below. If you'd like to get semi-regular channel news and updates, as well as my live streaming schedule for the week, you can do so by liking and following me on Facebook. If you'd like to help support me in the channel, as well as gain some access to various perks, you can become my supporter on Patreon. If you've got a replay like this one that you'd like to see featured on my channel, you can do so by sending it to my email. And if you'd like to watch me play World of Warships, among other games, live, you can do so by following me on Twitch. You can find the links for all of those in the video description down below. And as always, I'll see you next time. Before I sign off, a big thanks to Air Cannon, one of my Patreon supporters. And a big thanks to Nate378 for sending me this epic hood replay. This is Captain Rye, signing off.